Today, we are unpacking the truly fascinating history of just a single, unassuming structure. But honestly, this building is like a perfect microcosm of 20th century Americana. We're talking about the Lake David Community Center right in Groveland, Florida. And this really isn't just a story about bricks and wood and mortar. It's a story of survival, of pure community spirit, and the relentless dedication of local citizens who took a simple lakeside plot and literally turned it into the beating heart of their hometown. If you ever wanted to understand how small towns in America built their social fabric from the ground up, there is absolutely no better example than this building right here. Let's dive in. The magic of June 11th, Lake David's origins. Okay, so take a look at this early, totally serene view of Lake David. You can spot the Edge Home, a boathouse, and the town's water tower just resting quietly in the background. Anchoring ourselves to this specific geography early on is just so important. Because before all the hustle and bustle of community centers and civic clubs, this quiet lakeside was basically the blank canvas for Groveland's future. It was this place of natural beauty that just naturally drew the townspeople together. It really set the stage perfectly for a communal gathering space. And the human element here is incredibly rich. The lake itself is actually named after David Lovett Crumb, who you see pictured alongside Elizabeth Sloan. And meanwhile, you have the Pates family, including their youngest daughter, Eva May, enjoying a gorgeous day out on the water in their boat in the early 1900s. But the community park, the one as we know it today, exists largely thanks to another key figure, Mr. Beach. It was Mr. Beach who generously donated so much of this lakeside land so the city of Groveland can maintain it as a park forever for families just like the Pates. Now, this is where it gets kind of magical. It's all about how the dates surrounding this land align. The title for the property was recorded on May 15, 1911. That's the official day Mr. Beach's donation of the park property is celebrated in local history. June 11, 1934. Town council minutes actually show that on that exact anniversary, a motion was made to officially hang the doors on the newly constructed community building. WPA funds a new era. Depression-era building. So you might be wondering, how on earth does a small town afford a brand new community center during one of the toughest economic periods in American history? Well, the answer lies in the WPA, or the Works Progress Administration. During the Great Depression, the federal government initiated these massive public works funding programs, mostly to create jobs and build infrastructure. This community center was constructed in the early 1930s thanks directly to that WPA funding. And to put the impact of that funding into perspective, it's the exact same government program used a few years later to build the area's very first hospital in nearby Claremont in 1938. This funding was an absolute lifeline that completely shaped the building's rugged construction. And this brilliantly illustrates exactly what that Depression-era funding bought: an austere, completely unpretentious original structure. It was rugged, it was wooden, and it was built purely for survival and function. But it was vital. This is the very real brick and mortar building where the town council voted to hang those doors back in 1934. Look, it wasn't fancy, but it was theirs, and it was ready to house all the events, the picnics, birthday parties, and reunions the town could possibly dream up. Let's jump into Section 3, The Woman's Club Steps Up. Okay, prepare to be overwhelmed by the sheer volume of community life housed right here. The very first club to call this place home was the American Legion, organized by Lacey Thomas, with Julian Rowe as a charter member. But after them came an absolute parade of civic life. We're talking Boy Scouts, Cub Scouts, Girl Scouts, Brownies, the Garden Club, the JCs, and of course the Junior Women's Club and the Women's Club. This building wasn't just a room with some chairs. It was the absolute center of gravity for the entire town's social development. But I really want to zero in on the relentless dedication of the Women's Club specifically. They were actually organized back in 1928 by Mrs. Z.C. Van Hosen and her daughter, Mrs. W.H. Hunter. And their primary project was so incredibly noble. They manned the city library. They maintained a 300-volume library that the city had supported. Volunteers worked diligently, pouring just countless unpaid hours into keeping this vital resource open for the public. The community owes a massive debt to librarians like Marion Basinger and Hope Sowards. They literally kept the light of literacy and learning alive right inside these walls. Next up, Section 4, Welcome to the Teenway, 1960s weekend hotspot. Now, what's really interesting is how youth culture in the 1960s completely transformed the vibe of the place. To teenagers, this building was known as the Teenway, the ultimate Saturday night hotspot. The dances were chaperoned by none other than Marion and Bob Basinger, and the mechanics of this were so amusingly strict. Originally, the dances were free, but every single teen had to get a punch card. Why? So they couldn't leave, cause a bunch of mischief out in town, and then try to sneak back in. Eventually, the teens wanted to upgrade from a basic record player, so they agreed to pool their money, literally paying an admission of a few cents each until they successfully bought their very own jukebox. It was just innocent, joyous, community chaperone fun.
Which brings us to our final part, Section 5, a legacy of preservation. By the time the early 1970s rolled around, that original rugged 1930s structure, well, it needed some serious TLC. Enter the family of Miriam Thomas, who was actually the Women's Club president way back in 1933. After she passed, her family willed $1,000 toward remodeling the building. And combined with the proceeds from endless club fundraisers, think fashion shows, spaghetti dinners, the whole shebang, they totally transformed it. They added beautiful open rafters to the ceiling, polished wooden floors, an open back porch, a small kitchen. But somewhat hilariously for a building in Florida, the one thing they still didn't add was air conditioning. So by the 1970s, the evolved building looked much more established, flanked by these beautiful, mature trees. And it's absolutely vital to point out that this renovation wasn't done by some faceless corporation. Valerie Stevens, the Women's Club president from 1973 to 1978, literally acted as the subcontractor for the project. Every single club president who preceded and followed her worked exceptionally long, hard hours, doing actual manual labor and organizing to improve and maintain this space. Let's see how this all builds into something even bigger. This preservation fed right into the broader cultural legacy of Groveland. The building became a muse, inspiring local artists to set up their easels out in the sun to paint it. It perfectly captures how this space, which again was maintained almost exclusively through the sheer willpower of generations of women leaders and community volunteers, became this indelible, picturesque part of the town's cultural identity. So, what does this all mean for us today? As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a thought. We've explored over 70 years of life, survival, and pure joy, all packed into one simple wooden building by a lake. From Mr. Beach's land donation and David Crumb's namesake lake to the crucial WPA funding, to Marion Basinger's Whiteberry and those wild Teenway dances, it really makes you wonder, what unassuming building in your own hometown is quietly holding on to a century of memories? What local history are you walking past every single day? I highly encourage you to look a little closer at your own community. Thank you so much for joining me, and keep exploring.